The woman no one wanted market was alive with noise, shouts, bargains, screams. Alien traders stood behind cages, offering slaves to anyone with credits. Some cages held fighters, others held workers, and many held women sold only for pleasure. The air smelled like oil, sweat, and pain. David walked slowly through the crowded rows. He kept his head down. His human face stood out here, but no one questioned him. Humans with money could buy anything in this place. He was not here for pleasure. He was looking for someone he didn't even know yet. The first trader waved him over, grinning. "You want something wild? I have one with 4 arms strong as a beast." David ignored him. Another trader called, "You want young? I have fresh ones perfect for your human taste." David kept walking. Then he heard something strange. Silence. In the corner, away from the loud voices, was a small cage covered in shadows. Inside sat an alien woman. She was still, not crying, not begging, not even looking up. Her skin was a soft pale blue. Her long silver hair was tangled and dirty. Thin metal rings marked her arms, proof she had been rented many times. The trader saw David staring. "Ah, that one." The man laughed. "She's no fun anymore. Rented too many times. Broken. Doesn't speak. Doesn't fight. Nobody wants her now." David stepped closer. The woman didn't move. Her head stayed down. Her breathing was slow, controlled. "Does she have a name?" David asked. "Name? What does it matter?" The trader scoffed. "Call her whatever you want. She won't answer." David crouched near the bars. Gently, he said, "What's your name?" For a moment, there was nothing. Then, barely above a whisper, her lips moved. "Alira." Her voice was dry, weak, but clear. The trader snorted. "See, still alive, but useless. I'll give you a good price, half off. Take her before she dies." David stood up, looked directly at the trader, and said quietly, "I'm not renting." The trader blinked. "What? I'm buying her. Forever." The man laughed. "You want to own this? She's useless." David's voice became sharper. "I'm buying her freedom." The trader stared, then shrugged. "Fine. Full price if you want her forever. Your problem now." David handed over the credits. The cage door opened with a rusty creak. Alira didn't move. David reached out his hand. "You're free now." She slowly raised her head. Her eyes were strange large, glowing softly like purple moons. But there was no trust in them, only confusion. "Why?" she whispered. "No one should be a slave." David said, "Not you. Not anyone." Alira stared at him. Then, slowly, carefully, she placed her thin hand into his. Her skin was cold. Her fingers trembled. But she stood. As they walked through the market, many stared. Some whispered. A few laughed. A human bought her. For keeps. She won't last. Another fool. David ignored them all. He held Alira's hand gently, but firmly, guiding her through the maze of greed and cruelty. At the exit, a guard stopped them. "Show proof of purchase." David handed him the data chip. The guard scanned it, then nodded. "You're responsible for her now." "I know," David said. They reached a small ship parked outside the city. Alira stood at the ramp, frozen. She had never seen a ship from inside before. "Come," David said softly. "You're safe." She looked up at him. Her lips trembled. "You don't want to use me?" she asked. "No," he said. "I want you to be free." Her eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. Inside the ship, David showed her a private room with clean clothes, a bed, and soft lights. "This is your room now," he said. "You can rest. You can eat. You can say no. You don't belong to anyone anymore." Alira sat on the bed carefully, unsure. "You will not punish me if I refuse," she whispered. "Never." She looked down at her hands. No one had ever said that to her. As David left the room, he heard her whisper something behind him. Soft, almost like a breath. "Why?" He paused but didn't turn. "Because you deserve better." Then he closed the door gently. Far away, in the shadows of the black market tower, a thin alien watched the scene on a security screen. He tapped a comm link. The human bought the broken one. A voice replied coldly, "Follow them. If he breaks our rules, we break him." Asterisk a cage without chains. Asterisk the door to her new room was closed. No chains. No guards. No locks. For the first time in her life, Alira sat on a bed and realized she could walk out anytime. No one would stop her. No one would beat her. But she didn't move. Her heart pounded. This must be another trick. She thought, it always starts like this, kind words before cruelty. Her whole life had been like this. Promises made only to be broken. Freedom offered only to be crushed. She couldn't trust it. Not yet. In the cockpit, David watched the stars ahead. He knew what she was feeling. He had seen it before in soldiers broken by war, in children rescued from slavery. Freedom was frightening when you never had it before. He made no demands. He simply waited. Hours passed. Finally, the soft sound of bare feet touched the metal floor. Alira stepped into the control room, wearing clean clothes David had left for her. The loose fabric hung awkwardly on her thin frame, but her glowing eyes seemed a little brighter. She spoke first, voice still low. Where are we going? David turned and smiled gently. Somewhere safe, a place where no one can take you back. Alira looked confused. Why? What do you want from me? Nothing, David said. Nothing at all. Her breath quickened. She stepped back. No one buys someone without wanting something. You bought me. David nodded slowly. I bought your freedom. That's all. Alira stared at him for a long time, then whispered, almost afraid of her own words. I don't know how to be free. The words struck David deep inside. It wasn't her fault. It was what slavery had done to her. He stood carefully, keeping his hands visible. You don't need to know right now, he said softly. Just stay here. Eat when you're hungry. Sleep when you're tired. No one will hurt you. He pointed to a small control panel. And if you want me to leave you alone, press this button. I'll stay out of your room until you're ready. Alira's lip trembled. She had never heard such words before. Control. Choice. She didn't trust it yet, but something inside her wanted to believe. Later, as the ship cruised silently through space, Alira sat at a small table. A plate of food sat in front of her. She touched the warm bread carefully, as if it might disappear. Her hands shook. They only fed me when clients paid extra for it, she whispered. David, sitting across the room, heard her, but said nothing. He let her speak freely. She took a small bite. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness but from something new. Relief. That night, as stars passed by the windows, David heard her voice again, this time stronger. Where are you from? She asked. Earth. David answered, a long way from here. Why did you come to this world? He smiled faintly. To save someone. I just didn't know it would be you. Alira lowered her head, trying to hide her tears. You don't know me. Not yet, David said gently. But I'd like to. Meanwhile, deep inside the Pleasure Market's control center, the head trader slammed his fist on the table. You're telling me the human bought her and disappeared? Yes, master, his servant replied nervously. They vanished after leaving port. The master snarled. She was one of our highest earning assets once. If buyers see slaves being freed, others will start thinking they have rights. He pressed a button, activating a dark screen filled with bounty hunters' faces. Track him, kill him if you must, and bring her back. No one steals from us. Back on the ship, David stood outside Alira's room. He could hear her soft breathing through the door. For the first time since he found her, she was sleeping peacefully. He whispered to himself, you're free, Alira. Even if you don't believe it yet, you're free. The deck collector's asterisk, the stars outside David's ship blinked like silent watchers. But far behind him, something darker moved. A ship followed him. No lights. No beacons. Only shadows. Inside that dark vessel, bounty hunters prepared their weapons. She was supposed to be rented forever, the lead hunter growled. No one breaks the market's rules. Not even a human. On David's ship, Alira's eyes opened suddenly. She felt it before the sensors did. Fear. Not from within but coming closer, like a predator stalking them in space. She left her room and found David sitting quietly in the control room. Someone is following us, she whispered. David turned to the screen. The scanners were still clean. You sure? He asked. She nodded. I always knew when they were coming, even before I could hear them. Suddenly, the alarm beeped. A red dot appeared on the radar, fast and closing. David's face hardened. You were right. He activated the defensive shields, but his ship was small. He knew it couldn't outrun a hunter-class vessel. The comms crackled. A cold voice filled the ship. Return the property. The girl is ours. Alira froze. Her hands shook. It was the same voice she had heard countless times when being sold, rented, or returned. David clenched his jaw. She's not your property. The voice replied with a sneer. She always was. The hunter ship fired. David dodged hard, engines roaring, but their shields took a hit. Alira stumbled, but caught herself. Why do they care so much about me? She cried. David glanced at her, because they never expected anyone to challenge them. If one slave goes free, others might believe they can too. The hunter ship prepared a boarding clamp. Soon they would be locked together. David had one option left. He switched to manual flight and led the ship straight toward a nearby asteroid field. Rocks spun like spinning blades. Lasers fired wildly. The hunter ship followed close behind. But David flew like a man with nothing to lose. Inside the small ship, Alira held tightly onto the chair. But even as fear gripped her, something inside her shifted. She was not the weak slave she once was. Her voice steadied. What can I do? Tell me how to help. David glanced at her, surprised but impressed. Take the secondary panel. Watch the heat levels. If we overheat, we're dead. She nodded sharply and jumped into action. The fear in her eyes didn't disappear, but something stronger started to rise beside it. Courage. Behind them, the hunter ship struggled through the spinning rocks. A sharp turn by David sent a large asteroid smashing into the enemy's left wing. The hunter ship wobbled. David shouted, "We might make it." But then the hunter ship fired one last missile straight toward them. David's hands flew over the controls. Alira screamed, "It's too close." He flipped a lever. A hidden decoy pod launched from the side of the ship. The missile locked onto the pod. Not their ship. Boom. The explosion shook the entire field. The hunter's ship lost control, spinning wildly into a cluster of rocks. Then silence. The danger was gone. For now. David let out a long breath. Alira collapsed into the chair, heart racing. Is it over? She whispered. For now, David said. But they'll send more. They landed on a nearby moon to make emergency repairs. In the quiet of the small repair bay, Alira sat beside David. She looked at her hands, still shaking slightly. I was always told I was weak, that no one would ever fight for me. David set down his tools and looked into her eyes. They were wrong. She blinked back tears. And I always thought I couldn't fight for myself either. David smiled gently. But you did. Far across the galaxy, in a dark tower, the head traitor slammed his fist again. They escaped. A shadowy figure behind him growled. The human is more trouble than we expected. The master narrowed his eyes. That we send the real hunters. No more mistakes. Back on the moon, David and Alira repaired the final parts of the ship. David spoke softly. We'll go somewhere they can't reach. Alira shook her head slowly. No, she said. I don't want to hide forever. He looked at her. Surprised. She straightened her shoulders and lifted her chin. They hunted me because they think I belong to them. I want to show them that I belong to no one. For the first time, her voice was filled with something new. Strength. Her first choice. The stars above the moon were quiet, but inside the ship, something powerful was building. For the first time since David bought her, Alira was standing by choice, not because anyone told her to, not because she feared punishment, because she wanted to. David sat across from her, holding a small silver device, a beacon that would send a signal to a distant safe colony. If we send this, he said, they'll find us a safe home, a planet, where no one can ever hurt you again. Alira stared at the beacon. Her hands trembled not from fear, but from the weight of the moment. Freedom was right there, one button away, but after years of being owned, rented, and used, freedom was the scariest thing she had ever faced. Once we send this, David said gently, your old masters can't follow. You'll be safe, Alira whispered. Safe, but hiding. Yes, she closed her eyes. I'm tired of hiding. David blinked. Alira opened her eyes again. This time, her voice was steady. I want to stop running. David leaned forward, confused but curious. What do you mean? She took a deep breath. I don't want to live in fear, always looking over my shoulder. I want to face them. I want to break them. David stared at her, surprised. For days, Alira had been healing her body. Now she was healing her spirit. I always waited for someone to save me, she whispered. But you didn't just save me. You gave me a choice. Her hands touched the table, firm now. And my choice is to fight back. David felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had expected to rescue a victim. Instead, he was standing beside a warrior slowly being born. You're sure? He asked softly. Alira's violet eyes locked onto his. Yes. Hours later, inside a small hidden station orbiting a neutral planet, David brought Alira to a secret group, the Broken Circle. They were former slaves, traders, soldiers, all people who had escaped the black market's grip. Their leader was an older woman named Mira, her face marked with deep scars. When Alira entered, the room fell silent. She was one of the market's pleasure slaves. Someone whispered. Mira stood, and now she stands here by choice. Alira raised her voice. I'm not a slave anymore. I want to help you take down the market. Some doubted her. Others whispered that she would break under pressure. But Mira saw something different. You carry pain, she said softly, but pain makes sharp blades. She offered Alira a hand. Then you fight with us. Alira took it. For the first time in her life, she wasn't known. She belonged. Over the next few days, Alira trained. Mira taught her how to fight with speed and focus. David helped her practice with blasters. Her body grew stronger. Her fear turned into something powerful. Cole encouraged one night as they studied a holo map of the market's main hub. David asked her quietly, "Are you scared?" Alira paused. "Yes," she admitted, "but fear doesn't own me anymore." David smiled. "I never doubted you." Alira looked at him, her voice softer now. "You gave me freedom." David. He shook his head gently. "No, you took it." Meanwhile, far away in the market's central tower, the head trader received a new report. The man snarled. "The pleasure slave we broke now stands against us." He slammed his fist down. "Then we break her again." A dark figure behind him whispered coldly, "Send the elite hunters. End it." Back at the secret station, David and Alira stood side by side, watching the final plan form. "We will strike their main hub," Mira said. "This will be dangerous." David looked at Alira. "You don't have to do this." She placed her hand over his. Her voice steady. Her eyes shining. "This is my choice." The proposal asterisk. The enemy didn't know it yet, but the woman they once owned was about to become their worst fear. Not a slave, not a victim, a leader, a voice, a symbol. David watched Alira from across the command deck. She was standing before a small team of fighters from the Broken Circle. For the first time, she was giving orders. Her voice was calm, clear. "I know what it's like to be trapped, powerless, and voiceless. That's why we fight. We fight for those who still sit behind cages waiting for hope." The room was silent as her words sank deep into every heart. Even the old warriors nodded as they prepared to move. David and Alira stood together in the hangar bay, looking at the small attack vessel that would take them toward the enemy station. David spoke softly. "We may not make it back." Alira smiled faintly. "Then at least I won't die in chains." David swallowed hard. His heart had been carrying something for days now. He took a small step closer. "Alira, you know you're free, right? You can leave anytime. You don't owe me anything." Alira tilted her head, her silver hair falling gently across her shoulder. "I know." Her voice was soft but sure. "That's why I'm still here." David's pulse quickened. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small ring, a simple metal band made from a melted chain, link he had secretly kept from her old cage. He held it out to her. "This chain once held you captive," he whispered. "I made it into something else." Alira stared at it, speechless. "I don't want to own you," David said gently, "but I would be honored if you would choose to stay as my wife." Tears filled her glowing violet eyes. For years, men had touched her, used her, bought her, but none had ever offered her something as pure as this, a choice to be loved. She didn't hesitate. She took the ring and slipped it onto her finger. "Yes," she whispered, "I choose you." The two held each other for a long moment, the alarms and noises around them fading into nothing. In that embrace, every scar, every painful memory behind them seemed to lose power. For the first time, Alira's body no longer shook with fear, only peace. But peace wouldn't last long. The attack began. The strike team launched toward the black market's central station, a massive floating fortress, orbiting a dying star. Inside that dark fortress, dozens of captured slaves still lived, their faces empty, their chains heavy. They didn't know freedom was flying toward them. Not yet. Inside the market's tower, the master trader received word of the incoming assault. He laughed. "Fools," said, "every hunter we have." Elite warriors prepared in silence, blades sharp, rifles loaded, armor gleaming. But none of them feared David. They feared her, the slave girl who refused to stay broken. The strike team docked at the outer ring of the station. Blaster fire erupted. Immediately, the battle had begun. David fought beside Alira, covering her as she led the rescue squads into the cell blocks. The prisoners stared in disbelief as the cage doors flew open. Some wept. Some fell to their knees. But Alira knelt with them and whispered, "You are free now. No one owns you anymore." Meanwhile, in the upper chamber, the master trader watched the security feeds with growing panic. "She dares," he growled. "She wins." His advisor whispered, but the fight wasn't over yet. In the central command room, Alira and David faced the final wave of elite hunters. Alira held her weapon steady, voice strong. "You cannot break what you no longer own." The battle that followed would be remembered forever. Asters, the last chains broken. Asters, the enemy didn't understand. They thought they were fighting the same girl they once rented like property. But they weren't fighting a slave anymore. They were facing a free woman, a leader, a wife, a warrior. The final battle inside the market's central tower began like a storm. Elite hunters, dressed in black armor, rushed into the command hall. Blasters fired, blades clashed. Alira led the charge with David beside her, fighting shoulder to shoulder. Every heartbeat was louder than the gunfire. One of the hunters lunged toward David with a plasma blade. Alira moved faster. She blocked the attack with her own weapon, sparks flying. Her violet eyes glowed fiercely. "You will not touch him." With one clean strike, she disarmed the hunter. Another charged from behind. David fired, dropping him before he reached her. They covered each other like they had done it for years. Perfect rhythm. The master trader watched from behind a reinforced shield above the chamber, his face twisted in fury. "You were supposed to be nothing but merchandise," he screamed into the speaker. Alira heard his voice echo across the room. She looked up at him. Her voice rang clear. "You broke my body, but never my soul. That was your mistake." The remaining hunters hesitated. Some lowered their weapons. The sight of former prisoners fighting beside Alira had shaken them. The chain of fear had snapped. Even slaves still in cages started rising, breaking out, joining the fight. It was no longer just Alira's battle. It had become a rebellion. David and Alira pushed forward, clearing the last guards. Then they faced the final door. The master trader stood behind it. David looked at Alira. "You don't have to go in," he whispered. She took his hand firmly. "Yes, I do. This is the last chain." The door opened. Inside, the master trader stood alone. His wealth, his army, his guards gone. Only fear remained in his eyes now. He stepped back. "You think you've won," he hissed. "You're still nothing. You'll always be what we made." "You." Alira walked forward slowly. Her voice was calm. "No, you made me a slave, but I made myself free." The master pulled a hidden blaster. He aimed at David. Alira's eyes flashed. Nitrogen monoxide. She threw herself between them. The shot fired. The beam struck her shoulder. She dropped to one knee but still raised her weapon. David fired back. The master trader fell. The man who built an empire on pain, finally silenced. David dropped beside Alira, holding her as the smoke cleared. "Are you okay?" "Alira, stay with me." Her breathing was heavy, but her eyes never lost their fire. "I'm okay," she whispered. "I'm free." Mira and the rebels entered moments later, followed by hundreds of freed prisoners. The entire station was now under their control. The black market empire had fallen, and at its center stood the woman no one wanted, the woman who broke every chain. In the days that followed, across many star systems, word spread like wildfire. The pleasure markets were collapsing. Former slaves rose up everywhere, inspired by the one who had once been sold for nothing, and who now stood as something priceless, a living symbol of hope. Late one night, in a quiet healing chamber, David sat by Alira's bedside. She was resting, her wound wrapped carefully. When she opened her eyes, he smiled softly. "You saved more people than you'll ever know." She smiled back, voice barely a whisper. "We saved each other." As dawn broke outside the station window, David held her hand. "You're not my property," he said. She squeezed his hand gently. "No, I'm your wife." She smiled wider. "By my own choice." The wife he chose, the life she deserved. Asters, the galaxy was changing, and it all started with one woman. A woman who had once been called worthless. Used, broken, forgotten. Now she was none of those things. Now she was free. The black market empire had fallen, its leaders captured, its chains shattered. Across dozens of worlds, former slaves were building new lives, but none of them carried a name whispered more than hers. Alira, the slave who refused to stay broken. The woman who chose freedom. The wife who became a symbol of hope on a quiet green world far away from the old markets. David and Alira stood together on a wide-open farm. No walls, no cages, no guards. Just sunlight, soft wind, and peace. Alira held a small child's hand, one of the many orphan children they had adopted from the broken trade networks. Her violet eyes glowed warmly as she watched the little girl run through the tall grass. David came up beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. You never imagined this, did you? Alira smiled gently. No. She looked up at the endless sky. I never imagined anything beyond a cage. Her voice was soft, but full of quiet strength. But you didn't just open the door, David. You helped me build a new world. The farm wasn't just for them. It had become a home for many who had escaped slavery. A place where healing began. Where every person carried scars, but no longer carried shame. Every evening, they sat around fires, telling stories not of pain but of survival, of courage, of love. One night, as stars sparkled above, Alira sat close to David by the fire. The children slept peacefully nearby. She whispered, You know, I still wake up sometimes thinking it was all a dream, that I'm back. In the cage, David took her hand. It's real. You're free. Alira squeezed his hand. I'm not afraid anymore. Far away, the Galactic Council declared new laws. No more black markets. No more slave trades. No more pleasure rentals. The network that once ruled in shadows had been completely exposed. And many said it all started because one human broke the rules. Because one man said no one should belong to anyone. Months later, at a ceremony held by the survivors, Mira stood before a huge crowd. Alira was asked to speak. She stepped onto the stage, wearing a simple dress, her violet eyes shining. There were no royal titles. No grand speeches, just her truth. I was once bought for nothing. She began, rented like a toy, left to break like trash. The crowd grew silent. But one man looked at me and didn't see property. He saw a person. Her voice grew stronger. A broken body can heal, but a broken soul needs something more, someone who believes in you, even when you don't believe in yourself. She looked down at David, who smiled proudly. I'm not a slave. I'm not property. I am, she paused, a wife. The entire hall erupted in cheers. As the sun set behind them, David and Alira sat on the porch of their simple home, listening to the laughter of the children playing. David said softly, You gave them hope. Alira leaned her head against his shoulder. You gave me hope first. She whispered one last line into the quiet evening sky. I was rented for fun once, but you bought me forever and loved me as your wife.